it's going to be a lot to talk about, Brian. I mean, there's so much going on, but I think we just start where Joe started, and the fact that the Beige Book is out, and that's kind of a measurement. But more importantly, the shutdown continues.
Yeah, it does, and we don't know when it's going to end, and we don't know what's going on behind the scenes as well. We obviously know all the public comments, all the press conferences that are being done. The shutdown is having real effects on the individuals who are furloughed or they are essential, but they're not getting their paychecks. So, we don't want to minimize that type of pain, but the broader economic effects are still, I think, very muted. The biggest thing that a lot of people have been focused on is the lack of data from the federal government. So we didn't get the jobs report this past week. We didn't get the inflation numbers. We will, though, get those inflation numbers next. So the upcoming Friday, October 24th at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, because they need that number in order to calculate the 2026 cost of living adjustment for Social Security.
That's important, right? Because
really
that is a major deal for folks. And so, there are other agencies that clearly are affecting Americans, and maybe they can come together and move something before it's too late, right? But does continue. We will look at other sources of data to make our estimates as well. But the other thing that really caught the attention of the markets this week is there was a bank, we'll call it a failure, right? I guess you could say it was some stress down in Texas, and then the head of the biggest bank in the country, J.P. Morgan, as Jamie Dimon said, usually when there's one cockroach, there's more.
Yep.
And that really roiled the markets.
It did, and it was unclear if he was talking about that particular instance or they even had some exposure to the same loans. And so some people were like, what about on your balance sheet, or are you talking about others? So it'll be interesting to see if they clarify that. Thankfully, when some of those smaller regional banks reported earnings on Friday morning, it seemed like maybe this is a little bit more contained. Just a couple banks that had...
I'm smiling at you, Brian, because, we were in the studio in probably early 2008, and we heard this was a contained event. And so I'm not trying to be, trying to cause any concern here, but when these things happen, my flags go up to say, is there more?
I agree. I think that it pays to be cautious or skeptical about, the quality of the loans. But that's where I'm reminded about, we learned from those past mistakes. Just back in 2023, there was that Silicon Valley Bank failure, SVB, that roiled the markets quite a bit. And I remember we were doing a lot of work digging into the disclosures about what's the different banks' exposure to debt. Have the value of the government debt gone down? Because during that period of time, we had the rising rates. And so the value of the assets that they owned, these government bonds, went down. And that caused some problems. And the Fed, the FDIC, they really stepped in and tried to ring fence that problem quickly. Now, the interesting thing is oftentimes when that happens, it's always over the weekend. Right? It's like they wait until Friday night.
Well, that's
or
when
Saturday.
The bank failures came, right? We're always Friday night. So then Saturday morning we were live and we'd read all of these bank failures, back in the day. And it was crazy because, people were listening to the show to see if their bank was on the list.
That's right. Yeah. Now, remember, FDIC, right? Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. So no reason why people need to kind of worry about that too much.
Right?
Yep.
And back then, even though there was failures, they were picked up by bigger banks
That's
or
right.
covered. That's really good point.
Yeah, that's the preferred way of resolving those issues is basically a shotgun marriage, right? Is to say, all right, there's a big bank here. Let's have them step up and buy this troubled lender.
I thought you were going to give me a Jimmy Stewart from It's a Wonderful Life. It's the money's in her house, in his house. Remember when he was behind and said, we don't have the money here.
That's right, yeah.
But that's not the case today. And so the banks are in much better shape. The credit quality is there, but we just don't want it to concern the investor sentimentism. That's really what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about real losses. And lastly, of course, earnings season is just getting going.
It is, and some of the biggest reporters so far have been the banks, especially the bigger ones. The fascinating thing is they were talking about how the loan quality was so much better than what was expected. Fewer defaults, so that was encouraging. And that's where I think the news out of those two smaller regional banks took a lot of people by surprise because we were seeing that, bank quality, the loan book, it looks good, and this comes out of the blue. That's where then we really dig into the details. Some of these smaller banks that announce their earnings still look pretty good. When we're looking at the health of the consumer, that's really fascinating because you have companies that are reporting saying how still higher income consumers are the ones who are still willing to spend. United Airlines, Delta, they're saying they are willing to splurge on premium seats or first class seats. Lower and middle income Americans, they're looking at coupons and discounts. So they're still buying, but it does seem like they've been retrenching for a while.
And that's really the case, that there's been a bifurcation of economies here in the United States. So something that probably we have to watch and address, not only as Americans, but really as investors as well. And folks, if you're looking at your portfolio right now and you're not a client, this is really the opportunity to go through it, take a look at it, make sure you know what you own, why it's in there, how much you're paying for it, get a financial plan.